Hello, all of you out there on the internet again. This is Kevin Kleeser coming to you from Crystal Vision with another program of The World According to Kevin. I was talking in my last video about the Corman Group and their defunding of Planned Parenthood and my disgust at that political decision to try to withhold contraceptives and the likes as their excuse for doing it, and the anti-abortion movement putting political pressure on them. And I did give a shout out to you all out there for the backlash that forced them to immediately overturn that decision. Well, since then they've also fired one of the people who led that decision has resigned from the organization. So more good news on that front. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight are somewhat connected to that, and that's about what's going on right now in Washington with Obama and the Catholic Church and the uproar, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act that was signed into law a year and a half ago and still isn't in play because of the protests from the Catholic Church and the political right thinking that this goes against the constitutional right of separation of church and state. Well, it's convenient for them to go ahead and argue church and state. Man, they hit you over the head with a club with it. But if it suits them the other way, to bring religion into our politics as far as their ideal of family values, oh my God, you better not argue that, or you're going to be blasted across the airwaves for it. So I just want to say this to the Catholic Church. Screw you and your attempts to try to keep people, women especially, from being able to have the right to use contraceptives, to be able to plan on when they want to have kids just because they want to have sex outside of marriage. God forbid. My God, like people aren't having sex outside of marriage. But that's what they're trying to do. They don't want you to have the choice on your insurance, your medical insurance, whether or not you want that included in your coverage. So I got a big problem with that. And you should have a big problem with that too. So you should be sending letters and emails to President Obama, and something I actually agree that he's trying to stand up to the Catholic Church to see done. So, but that leads me on to Rick Santorum, the man who all of a sudden has won 3 primary states in the Midwest against Mitt Romney. And I'm bringing that up in the same context as what's going on with Obama and the Catholic Church, because here's a few things that Rick Santorum has said in the past. He equates homosexuality to bestiality. He thinks that sex before marriage should be made illegal. So you want that man running the government? He also believes the state right to ban contraceptives. There's that word again. Oh my God, you want to protect yourself against STDs and having kids? No, not with this man as president, because he thinks it's perfectly okay in a world that's already got 7 billion people, which is double the population in the last 30 years, that we should, what the hell, have another 3 billion more unwanted kids that we can't find jobs for, that we can't take care of. So this whole idea of separation of church and state is really should be pissing you off, because when it's convenient for them to raise that banner, they do. And when it's inconvenient, no. So please do me a favor. Give a shout out about that particular issue, because it really impacts all of us. When you look at the fact that we're not going to have the jobs as it is with the population. And if we don't get this population under control, everything else that we're trying to do is a moot point, because as I've already stated, the resources of this world are finite, and we're using up faster than they can be replenished. So there's enough about that particular issue. The other thing that I wanted to follow up on was the Middle East and Egypt and their generals and what's come out of that over the last couple of days. I don't know if you heard, but the Egyptian generals have decided to arrest 19 Americans because they're trying to spread democracy in the country, which was perfectly okay until the generals needed an excuse to placate the fundamentalists who were rioting over the 79 deaths at the soccer match at Port Said, and the 12 people who were killed in the follow-ups by the Egyptian military over the coming days. So their reasoning to arrest these people was to placate the fundamentalists. But on the other side of the coin, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in a strongly worded rebuke to these same generals, is threatening to withhold financial aid, which, by the way, over the last 30 years has amounted to tens of billions of dollars that has gone directly into those same generals' pockets to maintain stability in the Middle East. So, you think the generals are between a rock and a hard place? I don't think so. I think it's all smoke and mirrors. Because trust me, within the next 2 weeks, when the population of Egypt calms down and they're placated over these actions, those Americans are going to be released with very little fanfare. Which leads me to the other action that's taking place that is also taking away from what's going on in Egypt, which is happening in Syria. Well, 2 UN resolutions were rejected over the last 3 days by Russia and China as far as sanctions against Syria and President Assad and the civilian casualties that his military has been inflicting on that poor nation. Well, it's really easy to go after President Assad in this environment because, number one, they're not oil rich. Number two, 74% of their populations are Sunni Muslims. Number three, the 10% of the Alawites Muslims that have been running the country like basically like the mafia for the last 40 years are going to be the ones that get the blowback when President Assad is assassinated and dragged through the streets of Damascus. So the generals are pretty smart and our State Department's pretty smart because the way I see it, it's just a way to keep the fundamentalists from gaining control of Egypt. Because if you have the generals leave the seat of power in Egypt, you've got the linchpin that's holding that region together gone. And so the religious fundamentalists that are being funded out of Iran are going to be free to wage war across borders, and that will definitely disrupt the flow of oil, because let's face it, the bottom line is this is all about the oil and our need for it, your need for it to fuel your cars. So, you know, it's not going to happen, and it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out over the coming weeks. So, there you have it. I still am saying that it's going to be Mitt Romney and it's going to be Obama in November. I'm still saying you don't have a choice as far as who you want to win the election. The true independents and the true civil libertarians of this nation don't have a voice. And my attitude to you out there is, why are you voting for any of these people? To me, you should have a non-vote. This election's about not returning the same flawed, corrupt people to office again for another 4 years. It's about us trying to find some people that can be true leaders that will lead us into a future that is optimistic and progressive and takes today's technologies and the promise of tomorrow's technologies and says, how do we gain control of the resources this world has to offer and make it work for all of us? So don't be fooled by what's going on in the Middle East and the proclamations therein out of the State Department and out of the executive branch. It's not going to happen the way they're saying it is. Egypt is going to maintain the same power structure. Israel will not allow anything otherwise. And the only thing still to be determined is who's going to be the one to attack Iran to keep them from going nuclear. My money's on the Mossad because I would, if I had to hazard a guess about the Iranian physicist who was assassinated about a month and a half ago, there's question about whether it was the CIA or the Mossad, and the way it was carried, the surgical manner in which it was carried out, a directional bomb attached by a motorcyclist on the back door of the car that only killed the physicist and left the driver alive. That sounds like classic Mossad. Anyway, so that's what I'm talking about today, and my next video will be day after tomorrow, which will be Friday. And within the next couple of weeks, I hope to be live streaming so that 1 hour every day that we can take a couple of video calls from the audience and go ahead and put them on and get your views on what I've been talking about. Because this is all about trying to get the youth of today interested in what's going on with the current system that's in power, because if you don't start understanding it and you don't start standing up for your own rights, you're going to find this whole generation is going nowhere, because technology is removing jobs faster than we can create them, and population is still growing at a rate that's unsustainable. So those are my words for the evening, and I look forward to the coming weeks to hearing your comments on crystalvision.com, and also we will be adding more links as we go on to bring other programs for you to, of interest for you to follow. So anyway, good night.